Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We're gonna do a reading wrap up. I've switched from doing monthly wrap ups to just general reading wrap ups when I feel like I've collected enough books to talk about and I have the time to film them. And that has been honestly such a relief for me. I'm really enjoying doing that. We have a lot of books. We're gonna go ahead and start getting into them like always. We're gonna start with the books that have not been in vlogs first. And that way, if you just want to hear me talk about the new books, you can hear me chat about them in the beginning and then click off when I start talking about the books that I've already chatted about in vlogs. And we're going to go in the order that I have read them. So first one we have is a library book. So I'll put the picture on the screen. And that is, of course, Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is the ever famous prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. It is following Haymitch's story and it was good. It was really good. Read the original trilogy way back in the day when I was in undergrad over like a spring break because I had to stay where I was working and all of my friends got to go back home. So I flew through them. I borrowed them from a friend and it was fantastic. I have never reread them. And then last year, the year before, I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and enjoyed it more than I thought. I had a friend who really kept encouraging me to read it because he enjoyed it so much and I'm glad that I did. And then seeing the movie was fantastic. So had to read this one. And the joy of this is that I had a ton of friends in my life read this as well. And it's rare that I get to chat about books and have overlap with the people in my life. So that is fantastic. And we're planning to have an in-person little book club chat about it soon when some of them are coming to visit. So I can't wait for that. But anyway, about the book. This book is a prequel. It's about Haymitch's Hunger Games, which was the 50th Hunger Games, and that is a quarter quell. If you're familiar with the world, that means that year's Hunger Games has a special component to it. And Haymitch's special component is that there are double the amount of tributes from each district. 2 male and 2 female tributes from every district. Haymitch is, of course, from District 12, and we get to go from there. Now, was this like a favorite book of all time? It was not. I think part of the fun for me was being back in the world of the Hunger Games, which I absolutely love. I am truly obsessed with the movies, the original trilogy of movies, and I rewatch them every year. They're a comfort movie for me. So I love being back in the world. It was great to get new content back in the world, and that was the majority of my enjoyment. I wanted this book to focus more on the games themselves than they did. I thought the games part felt very rushed, and that's where a lot of the intrigue and world building happens. So I thought that was a little bit rushed. I thought the ending was a little bit rushed, and that was where a lot of the emotional resonance was. And then the beginning was just kind of too long for me. So pacing, plot structure, not totally to my taste, but overall, if you have enjoyed the other books, you're gonna still enjoy this. And I'm always happy to get some more Hunger Games content. So that is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Then we have a short story collection, and that is Heartbroken by Chelsea Bieker. This is published by Catapult, and I really enjoyed this. This I felt like was in such interesting conversation with a short story collection I read earlier in the year and absolutely adored, which was Sarahland by Sam Cohen. And these two, have so much to say to each other. We have a collection of stories about women all taking place in California that are kind of like rough and tumble in a lot of ways. There's a lot about longing and abandonment in here. Those are some strong thematic elements that tie the stories together. Definitely in true Chelsea Bieker style, some unlikable narrators. There was a story in here that is about our female protagonist who meets a cowboy that is maybe more nefarious than meets the eye. That story has stuck with me in a major way. It's burned into my retinas. It's pretty violent as well. And another one that also stands out is a story about 2 sisters who have a negligent mom and this kind of mystery that unravels with her. There's so many good things, but trigger warnings, same as Sarahland, trigger warning. There are a lot of dark things that happen in these books. I don't ever feel like it's done gratuitously. It feels like it really impacts the story in a significant way, and just such well rendered female characters. So complicated, so brutal, and I loved it. So this was a fantastic short story collection, would definitely recommend. Then we have, an anticipated release for me, The Mysterious Disappearance of the Marquise of Loria. This is by Jose Donoso and translated from the Spanish by McDowell. It's published by New Directions, and this cover is very cool. Very slim. I overall didn't love this. This was a little bit of a disappointment for me, not just because it was one of my most anticipated books based on the premise, but I have wanted to read Jose Donoso for a long time, and this was a little bit strange. I actually think this book, it was originally classified, and maybe even some places still classified, as erotica, although I don't think this is what modern readers would think of as erotica. I think it's really just classified as erotica because it takes place in a historical context, and our main female protagonist, the Marquise of Loria, is exploring her sexuality and has this drive to have more satisfactory sexual experiences. Because we start off with this book, this is all on the back, we start off when she gets married to her husband, who is the royal, and she marries into the family. She moves to Madrid. She's originally from Nicaragua. That's where her family is from. So she marries into this family, moves to Madrid, becomes royalty, becomes very wealthy, and her husband very shortly after passes away. She never was fully satisfied in her sexual relationship with her husband, so she takes widowhood as an opportunity to try and start having affairs with other men and have a better understanding of what sex could be like for her. There are other things happening in the book. It's not just that, but that does take a central focus in the book. This book also has like a semi-speculative element to it with the dog that's on the cover. The dog is a driving, chaotic force in the novel that is very controlling and domineering. And I think it's like a symbol for like control and dominance. There's some interesting interplay with the dog and the other men and how they relate to our main character, but ultimately this felt a little bit too fragmented for me in the writing style specifically. I also think this has some questionable sexual elements to it. While this book was originally published in 1936, I still think we need to talk about that. Like, there are some issues around language that's used here. There are some issues around non-consent, and that is jarring when you're reading it. And I'm fine to reckon with that, but I want to mention it to you here so you know going in. And ultimately, like, I just don't think the book is well written enough for it to be worth engaging in that type of material. So yeah, take that for what you will. I didn't love this one, and it was a disappointment. I will probably be unhauling it. That is The Mysterious Disappearance of the Marquise of Loria. Next up, we have Crooked Plow. This is by Itamar Vieria Jr. and it is translated, let's see, it's not on the cover, translated by Johnny Lorenz, published by Verso Books. And this is published or translated from the Portuguese, I should say. The author is Brazilian. I really enjoyed this. I thought this was great. I was nervous going into this book because the blurb tells you that the story kicks off by an experience of violence between our two sisters that are the main protagonists of this novel. They find their grandmother's knife when they're young girls and they start playing with it. The knife has this kind of mysterious allure to it. One of them ends up cutting off her own tongue, and that's in the very beginning of the book, and that kind of sets these disparaging paths for the sisters moving forward in their life. That is really, really interesting to follow, and we get different sections. So our first section starts off with the sister who still has her tongue, and that's an interesting choice, right? Because she still has a voice, and we get to hear her side of events when they're younger leading up into adulthood. I don't really want to say what happens. It's hard to say what happens. Then we switch to the other sister's story, POV, and get some of the events back over again. And then we also see how they enter into adulthood, the opportunities that each of them have, even though they're similar ages, even though they have similar intellectual abilities, but one of them is mute, and she has much less opportunities in her life than her other sister, even though she has the same level of ambition as her. Now, they're not always like in direct conflict with another. They have a lot of similarities, and there's a lot of love between them as well. They develop sort of a shorthand to communicate with one another, and there's so many interesting characters in this book, not just the sisters themselves, of which they are fascinating in their own right, but the men that they choose to be with throughout their lives, their parents, the grandmother herself. And this book is really tackling colonization in a really, really strong, heavy-handed way, although I think it's still well done, even though it is in fact heavy-handed. And it's tackling slavery. This family lives on a plantation, and while the girls grow up in a time where they are technically free, although they are pretty much still enslaved, they're in essentially indentured servitude because they can't afford anything. The people that own the plantation force them to work the land in order to stay living on the land. As they grow, right, and the community around them gets more and more rights taken away, they're having to live in squalor, even though they are the ones who tend to the land and keep it going. That younger generation starts to feel like be more vocal about all of the indignities that they are having to suffer and try to start fighting back. So again, so many interesting elements to this book. I thought it was fantastic and would definitely recommend it to anyone that's been interested. Don't be afraid of the violence. It is, I know that it starts off with someone cutting off their tongue, and that is in fact very violent. That is the most violent that it gets. And I should say that's the most graphic that the violence gets. There is violence later on, but that's the most graphic. So definitely encourage you to pick up Crooked Plow if you have thought about it. Next up, we have, another library book that is also an anticipated release, On the Clock by Claire Baglin. This is translated by Jordan Stump and published by New Directions, I think, as well. I'll fix that down below if it's not correct. This book was so interesting in the ups and downs that I had emotionally with it. I started off loving this book and thought it was going to be a favorite book of the year. It is also very short. I think it's around 150 pages. We're getting the perspective of a family through the eyes of the daughter only. So her mother, father, and brother all come into play. Her brother is younger than her, but she is the only POV we get. We alternate sections, very quick sections, almost vignette-like, between her experience in childhood growing up with her family and then her working at a fast food restaurant. It is meant to be a McDonald's. It's never stated that it's a McDonald's, but you're meant to infer that it is McDonald's. And the reason why we get these parallels is the book is trying to have this conversation around class and socioeconomic identity. Her father is very much working class. He works in a hard labor job that has a lot of risks for his body, but also has a strong sense of pride for the work that he does. He definitely plays into a lot of the toxic masculinity stereotypes. This book sent me in the beginning because it felt so real. It felt so real. And I won't say in which ways, because this involves more than me, but some of these reminded me so much of my own childhood. It was wild. And then you get her working at this fast food restaurant, knowing that she's only going to be working there for a summer. It's a temporary job because she is going to be going off to college at the end of the summer. And we see her in this job in her own ways, kind of putting her body at risk. We see her getting burned at the fryer, for example, stuff like that, where she's putting her own body at risk in a similar way that her father has, but knowing that this is temporary. And her father's, it was not. It was his only option to continue to make the amount of money that he was making. That element of the book I thought was done very well. I do think with the family sections, we started going off on tangents that did not make total sense to me. And while the fast food sections felt really cohesive, the family sections, I lost the plot of what was going on there. And that's the only reason it isn't going to be a favorite of the year. I do still enjoy this book. I think it's worth reading. And again, it's really short, so you don't have to invest a lot of time in it to read through it in a deliberate and intentional way, but I don't think it totally stuck the landing for me in the family section. So that is On the Clock by Claire Baglin. Next up, we have another library book, and that is A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. I don't remember the publisher for this one, so I will put it down below. This is the sequel to The Tainted Cup, which is a Anna and Din mystery series. I think that's the name of the series. And I read The Tainted Cup not that long ago, only a couple of months ago, and really enjoyed it. It is a murder mystery fantasy series. And I was excited to be able to get to the second one before I forgot some of the things from the first book. I listened to these on audio, and I think the audiobook narration is fantastic for these. I would definitely recommend you go that way if you like listening to audiobooks. This one, I think I might have liked it slightly less than the first one, but only very slightly. I think they're both very solid books. To me, other people might not agree with this. I think these are murder mysteries first with a fantasy veneer on the top. And that's solely because I think there are vastly more mystery tropes that are going on here than fantasy tropes. Although I think the fantasy world is very well done, there's just a lot of mystery tropes going on. And I thoroughly enjoyed that because I love mysteries. I love a murder mystery. This one, without any spoilers, they're somewhat episodic. There is an overarching narrative, but the murder mystery itself is totally episodic, and you don't need to necessarily remember every detail about the previous murder mystery. Murder for this one, very fascinating. This one I felt like was slightly easier to figure out than the previous one, but I still thought it was very clever. I love the characters in this. I think they're really a highlight of why this series has done so well so far. If you are interested in a really strong murder mystery that can subvert those tropes in a number of ways because of the fantasy setting, I would definitely encourage you to pick this up. So that is A Drop of Corruption. And I think that is the end for the ones that have not been in vlogs. Let's get into the books that have been in vlogs, of which there are many. I'm going to go over them in the order that the vlogs came out. So firstly, we have, we have Kala by Colin Walsh. This is published by Doubleday, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. And I read this in my How Many Hours Do I Spend Reading in a Week vlog. This was a fantastic literary thriller. It takes place in a small Irish town. We follow a group of, at first, young kids. There are 6 of them. They're like a little kid gang getting into ruckus, having a good time with one another. And they're all living in kind of like a really touristy, small Irish town. Cut to when they're older, we have an understanding that Kala, one of the friends, disappeared many years ago when they were children. And we are now following 3 of those POVs in present day, because they are all back in their town for one reason or another, because they never left or because they are visiting for a specific reason. And the mystery of what happened to Kala slowly unravels from there, including other mysteries that are getting unraveled as well. This does have animal violence in it, so fair warning for that. And this does have sexual assault in it. There are a number of trigger warnings going on here, so I would definitely look those up. But this was fantastically written. I thought the mysteries were crafted well, and more than anything, the characters were well done. You really feel for them, and they definitely stand out from each other. Enjoy this one overall. That is Kala. And then in that vlog, I was reading a secret book that was for my latest episode of Now or Never, episode 3, and that was Short War. So I wasn't saying what book I was reading, I was just saying I'm reading a secret book for Now or Never. It was Short War. This is by Lily Meyer. It's published by A Strange Object, which is an imprint of Deep Vellum. And this is a complex little book, let me tell you. We are getting 3 sections. The first section follows Gabriel, who is a United States citizen growing up in Chile because his father works for a newspaper there. You quickly come to find out that his father is sort of a CIA puppet and is spreading propaganda through his newspaper position. They're very wealthy in contrast to a lot of the people that they live around, but Gabriel himself really feels Chilean. He's grown up there most of his life. He doesn't have the same values as his family. He has a strong connection with his two best friends. They are all communists, and that gets tied into the socialist movement that is currently on the rise in Chile. And then we get his daughter's perspective. So you cut to her perspective, and she has just moved to Argentina because she's trying to finish up her doctoral thesis. And while she's there, sort of the big family secret gets revealed. And then in the third section, we get an unknown to you POV. You know when you get it, but it is a spoiler, so I'm not gonna say. So cut to, you get an unknown POV, and that is the smallest section, but very well done. I explained this in the vlog. I think some sections were done better than others in this for me. This has a lot of interesting political commentary, a lot of fraught family dynamics amidst deep connection and love for one another. We're also grappling with this idea of what is family. Who are the people that you have connection to? And what is the meaning of the roles that we might play as a family? Last thing I'll mention about this, which it just has so many things that it's grappling with, which is why I'm mentioning so many things, is it really hones in on how place affects your identity. And we see that with all three of the POVs that we get in this book. So yeah, really fascinating little book. I would love to talk to someone about this. So that is Short War, such an enigma. The other book I read in that Now or Never episode was Morningside Heights by Joshua Henkin. This is published by Vintage, and this was recommended to me years ago now by a bookseller who I frequently have similar tastes to. This takes place in New York City in the 70s. We're following a family again, which really interesting that I got two like strong family novels for the same episode. So this one follows a family. We have a past timeline and a current timeline, but we're also reckoning with the father of this family, the patriarch of the family, who's a very well-known professor in the academic community. He gets Alzheimer's, and you start to see his decline and how that impacts everyone in the family. This one was another mixed bag for me. Some parts really resonated, some did not. I think the mother is the standout character in this book, and she definitely gets the most page time, so I think you're meant to feel that way. But other POVs fell a little bit flat for me. And at the end of the day, it was just like, yeah, that was a good story, and that's that. I have nothing more to say about it. This will probably be another one that I unhaul. So that is Morningside Heights. We're getting there, people. We're getting there. Then we get into the International Booker vlog. So there are 5 books to talk about. I'm going to try and talk about them really quickly here. The first one that I read was Hunchback by Saou Ichikawa, translated from the Japanese by Barton. I'm not going to remember the publishers for a lot of these. It's that one Hogarth. I don't know. I'll put it down below. This one was great. It is very short. Most of these are very short. It's got disability raps looking at the intersection between the ways in which we're marginalized and the kinks that we have. It's talking about ableism, class, socioeconomic status, lots of things going on here, but I think it was really well done. It is shocking, and I just talked about this in the comments with Tiffany from Towering TBR, but that main character is very controversial. So know that going in. They're not likable, they're very controversial. That is Hunchback. Next up, we read Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico, translated from the Italian by Sophie Hughes. This book, to me, is a novel about millennial malaise. We're following a millennial couple who moves to Berlin and is trying to live out their tech work from home dream life. They're really enchanted with Berlin in the beginning, and then they start to recognize all the gentrification that is happening around them. Maybe not totally realizing that they are a part of the gentrification that's happening around them. We just get their day-to-day life with them feeling unfulfilled in many different ways, trying to just look for that thing, just that one thing that will make them feel purpose and bring things back together again. They end up taking a trip to Spain, I think, at one point. They're very disillusioned there as well. It very much feels like the Adam Sandler skit where it's like, if you're sad and you buy tickets to Italy, you'll still be sad, just in Italy. That's very much this book. So yeah, wild ride, but I do think that has a lot of interesting things to say about technology and housing as well. I think the housing conversation in that book is fascinating. So that is perfection. Next up, we have Small Boat by Vincent Delecroix, translated from the French by Helen Stevenson. This one is published by Hope Road. I think it's actually by Small Axes, which is an imprint of Hope Road. This book is another one told in 3 sections that is very popular nowadays in the literary fiction world. The story is based on a real life tragedy about a boat of immigrants, a dinghy of immigrants, I think 49 in total, who are traveling the channel from the French side to trying to get to the English side, and their dinghy starts to fail, and they make multiple distress calls to both the French and English rescue services. And ultimately, there is a failure on so many people's parts to provide the rescue services, and all but 2 of them die. Over a very prolonged period of time, like hours and hours, it takes for the boat to fully sink and then for most of them to drown. And the book is grappling with so many things. It's grappling with who is responsible, what role does complicity play in the conversation of who is responsible, how do personal biases impact the way that you not just look at that situation, but act in that situation, and the mental gymnastics that a lot of us in privileged positions go through to ignore the suffering of others. And it is a really powerful book. I think the structure of the book is really intentional and impactful, because we start in one POV, we switch to the immigrant's POV on the boat, and then we go back to the first POV that we started in. I think that worked really flawlessly. And it's a book that hopefully is going to make a lot of people, me included, think about what it means to truly live into the values that we purport to have. My esteem for the book has grown the further away I've gotten from it, and I would definitely recommend reading it if you're interested. And even if you're not interested, I would recommend you reading it, I guess. And then lastly, we made it, folks. We have On the Calculation of Volume 1 by Solveig Ball, translated by Barbara Hovland from the Danish. This one's also by New Directions. So was the other one by New Directions? I'm so confused on the publishers, y'all. I'll have put it all down below, but at this moment, she's very confused. This one is a Groundhog Day novel. We're following our main character, Tara, who realizes that she has woken up on November 18th over and over and over again. I get why this was such a fan favorite from the list. The main character is really complex and endearing in a lot of ways. I said this in the vlog, but I think the first half of the book suffers from a pacing issue a little bit. The second half of the book I thought was stellarly written, and I'm definitely looking forward to continuing on in this series, because it is going to be a planned septology. I think 5 of the books are already written, and she's currently working on the 6th. Yeah, this book had so many heartbreaking things to say about relationships. There's this like distance that builds between her and her husband, because she's living all this life that he has no recollection from. I think it so brilliantly shows this importance around witnessing, the power and meaning that comes from witnessing each other's lives when you're in relationship with someone, and how detrimental it is when you lose that. And I thought it was a beautiful way to show that concept. And yeah, excited to continue on with this series. If you want to learn more about any of these, I'll send you to the vlog, because this video is long enough. But those are all the books that I have read recently, of which there were many. So please let me know if you have read any of these and what you thought of them, if you're interested in reading any of these, and tell me your favorite book that you read recently. And with that, we will see each other in the next video. Bye.